The digital clock on my nightstand glowed a sinister 1:07 a.m. The house was a tomb, silent except for the frantic thumping of my own heart. My body, heavy and leaden from a double shift, screamed for the oblivion of sleep. Being a sergeant in the Portside PD was a special kind of exhaustion, a mix of mundane paperwork and sudden, gut-wrenching violence. That night, I'd broken up a knife fight behind the dockside fish market. The scent of brine and blood still felt like it was clinging to my uniform. I had just managed to sink into the plush embrace of my sofa, my eyes sliding shut, when a sound shattered the silence. Not the usual late-night revelry from the harbor pubs or the distant rumble of a cargo ship. This was a frantic, desperate pounding on my front door. Instinct, honed by 2 decades on the force, had me on my feet before I was fully awake. My service weapon was locked in the safe, but my hand closed around the cold, heavy base of a wrought iron candlestick. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice rough with sleep and sudden adrenaline. The only answer was a choked, guttural sob. Then a voice I would have recognized in the depths of hell, cracked and broken. "Mom, please, Mom, open the door." My blood ran cold. "Lena?" I fumbled with the deadbolt, my fingers suddenly clumsy, and yanked the door open. My daughter, my beautiful Lena, collapsed into my arms like a marionette with its strings cut. She was trembling violently, a leaf in a storm. I caught her, my arms wrapping around her thin frame, and the porchlight fell upon her face. The world stopped. Her right eye was a grotesque masterpiece of purple and black, swollen shut. A deep, angry cut split her lower lip, the blood dried and crusted at the corner. She clutched her ribs, her breath coming in shallow, painful hitches. "Lena, my God, baby, what happened?" I whispered, my voice cracking. She buried her face in my shoulder, her entire body shaking with the force of her sobs. The words that escaped her lips were ragged, torn from a place of utter devastation. "It was Julian. He hit me. Because of her. Because of Sasha." The name hit me like a physical blow. Julian, my son-in-law, the man who had stood in my living room, his hand over his heart, promising to love and cherish my only child. A white-hot fury, colder and more terrifying than any I'd felt on the job, ignited in my chest, but it was immediately doused by a wave of such profound, soul-crushing pain that I almost buckled. I held her tighter, my rock, my anchor in the storm that was now our lives. I didn't speak. Words were useless, hollow things. I half-carried, half-dragged her inside, kicking the door shut with my heel. I laid her gently on the sofa, her whimpers of pain a knife twisting in my heart. I moved on autopilot, fetching a warm washcloth and the well-stocked first aid kit from the bathroom. "Shh, sweetheart, just lie still," I murmured, my voice a forced calm I was far from feeling. I dabbed at her split lip, the cloth coming away stained a rusty red. The cut was deep, vicious. This was no accident. This was intent. Her hands were still clamped over her stomach. "Lena, honey, I need to see," I said softly, prying her fingers away. She resisted for a second, a fresh wave of shame and fear washing over her face, then went limp. I lifted the hem of her blouse. A sound escaped me, something between a gasp and a groan. A massive, horrifying bruise bloomed across her abdomen, a violent galaxy of black, deep purple, and sickly yellow. It was the shape of a fist, repeated over and over again. "Lena," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I was struggling to contain. I reached for my phone, my movements sharp and precise. I bypassed 911 and called the direct line for the head of the ER, an old friend. "Anya, it's Maria Flores. I'm bringing Lena in now. Be ready." I didn't wait for a response. My car was in the shop for a brake line repair. I called a cab. Then sat beside Lena, draping a blanket over her shaking shoulders. Her phone, discarded on the coffee table, lit up incessantly. The screen flashed with 7 missed calls from Julian. A new message preview appeared, stark against the glowing screen. "You open your mouth, you lose everything. Think, you stupid bitch." I saw red. My hand shot out to grab the device, but Lena, with a surge of panic strength, snatched it away. "Mom, no, don't. It's nothing. Just ignore it," she pleaded, her good eye wide with terror. I didn't push. I just held her hand, my thumb stroking her knuckles. "I'm here, baby. Nothing is going to happen to you." But the promise felt like a lie. Something had already happened. Something had broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be fixed. The cab ride to St. Jude's Medical Center was a blur of streetlights and silence. Lena leaned her head on my shoulder, her tears soaking into my shirt. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered over and over. "I didn't want to bother you. I had nowhere else to go." Each apology was a fresh wound. I was her mother. My job was to protect her, and I had failed. I had let a wolf into our fold. Dr. Anya Petrov was waiting at the ER entrance, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She took one look at Lena and ushered us into a private examination room. As the nurse helped Lena out of her jacket, more evidence was revealed. Ugly, finger-shaped bruises encircled her wrists, and another blotched her upper arm. I stood frozen, my police mind cataloging each injury as evidence, while my mother's heart shattered with every new mark. "We need x-rays," Anya said, her tone clinical but her eyes soft with pity. "I'm concerned about fractured ribs, possibly internal bruising." I just nodded, mute. I went to the reception desk to handle the paperwork, my hands steady only through sheer force of will. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I knew it was him. I rejected the call, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. When she was stabilized, doped up on painkillers and settled with an IV, I took her home. I tucked her into my bed, made her a cup of sweet tea, and waited until her breathing evened out into a drugged sleep. Dawn was bleeding into the sky when I finally stepped onto my front porch, the cool air doing little to clear the rage humming in my veins. My neighbor, old Mrs. Gable, was already puttering in her award-winning rose garden across the street. She saw me and hurried over, her kind face etched with concern. "Maria, dear, I heard such a commotion last night. Is everything all right?" I didn't have the energy for lies. I gave her the abridged version. Julian, the beating, Lena's midnight flight. Mrs. Gable's face hardened, her kindly eyes turning flinty. "That monster," she spat. "After all you've done for him. I always thought he had shifty eyes." Then I remembered. Mrs. Gable, paranoid about package thieves, had a state-of-the-art security system with cameras covering her porch and the street. "Mrs. Gable," I asked, a plan beginning to form in the ashes of my despair, "did your cameras pick up anything last night?" "Of course, dear. Let me check." She fumbled with her smartphone, her fingers surprisingly deft, and pulled up the footage. There it was, in haunting, high-definition black and white. My daughter stumbling up my walkway, her body crumpled with pain, raising a trembling hand to pound on my door. The audio picked up her ragged sobs, her desperate pleas. It was unbearable to watch. I recorded the playback on my own phone, my heart a stone in my chest. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. This means everything." "You get that bastard, Maria," she said, squeezing my hand, "for that sweet girl." I went inside, straight to my bedroom. I opened the closet and stared at my police uniform. The crisp blue shirt, the pressed trousers, the duty belt. It wasn't just a job. It was an identity. It was authority, an I was about to use every ounce of it. In silence, I dressed. Each button fastened, each piece of gear secured, was a step toward a new purpose. I was no longer just Lena's mother. I was Sergeant Maria Flores, and I was declaring war. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years, but had kept for a reason I only now understood. David Chen, the best divorce and litigation attorney on the coast. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice groggy. Chen? David, it's Maria Flores. Start the plan. There was a pause. Maria? Are you sure? Never been more sure of anything in my life. Get ready. I hung up.
I retrieved my digital camera from my desk. I went to Lena, still sleeping fitfully, and with a photographer's detached eye and a mother's breaking heart, I documented every injury. The split lip, the black eye, the monstrous bruise on her torso, the fingerprints on her wrists. Each flash was a searing burst of truth. At my dining table, I became a commander preparing for battle. I created a new folder on my laptop, Operation Phoenix. Into it went the photos, the video from Mrs. Gable, and a scanned copy of the initial medical report. I backed it up to a secure cloud drive and a physical encrypted USB stick. There was no turning back. By 8 a.m., Lena was awake, her face puffy and pale. I brought her broth and toast, my uniform clearly startling her. "Mom, you're working?" she mumbled. "You need to keep your strength up, mija," I said, my voice gentle but leaving no room for argument. I took her back to St. Jude's for a more comprehensive CT scan, my gut churning with fear of what they might find. While we sat in the sterile waiting room, I opened my laptop and connected the USB drive. Watching that video again, hearing her cries in the cold light of day, solidified my resolve into something hard and unbreakable. Then Lena's phone rang. Julian Mendez flashed on the screen. I snatched it before she could react and powered it off. "Mom, no! If he can't reach me, he'll what, Lena?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "He has nothing left to threaten you with. Not anymore." I pried out the SIM card and replaced it with a burn phone's prepaid SIM I'd picked up weeks ago, a paranoid precaution that had now become essential. The CT results showed severe soft tissue damage and 2 cracked ribs, but thankfully no internal bleeding. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The physical wounds would heal. The others? That would take time. I took her home and called David Chen again. "I have the medicals and a video. Ironclad." "Good. Get me everything. We meet at my office at 3 p.m. Mrs. Gable came over with a container of her famous chicken and rice soup. For the patient. Before lowering her voice, "My nephew is a private investigator. If you need eyes, he's discreet." I filed the offer away. The net was widening. That afternoon, Lena tried to rest, but was plagued by nightmares. Jolting awake with a cry. "He pushed me. And Sasha was there. She just laughed," she sobbed. "Sasha?" I asked, the name of venom on my tongue. Through tears, Lena spilled the story. Sasha Volkov, Julian's mistress, a sleek, predatory woman from his office who had begun to appear at their home, flaunting her presence, whispering poison in Julian's ear, delighting in Lena's humiliation. The pieces snapped together. This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a calculated campaign of destruction. I took more photos of Lena's wrists, making sure her watch displaying the date and time was in every frame. At 3 p.m. sharp, we were in David Chen's sleek, modern office. He laid out the evidence, the photos, the medical report, the video. "This is excellent for the restraining order and the assault charge," David said, steepling his fingers. "But to really break him, to ensure he can't ever touch her or her assets again, we need more. We need the adultery, and we need to prove financial malfeasance. It cuts the legs out from under any defense of heated passion." I knew what I had to do. The mother's rage was now fully integrated with the cop's cold calculation. That night, I dared not leave Lena at home. Mrs. Gable, bless her, took her in without a second thought. I changed out of my uniform into dark, nondescript clothing, jeans, a black sweater, a baseball cap. I grabbed my personal digital camera with a powerful zoom lens and drove my old, inconspicuous sedan across town to a trendy area known for its cocktail bars. The Velvet Rope was exactly the kind of place Julian loved. Expensive, flashy, and soulless. I parked in a shadowy alley across the street and waited. My patience was rewarded around 9:30 p.m. Julian's silver BMW M4 pulled up. He got out, smoothing his tailored suit, a smug, self-satisfied look on his face that I now wanted to smash. Minutes later, she appeared. Sasha Volkov. She was exactly as Lena had described. Tall, sharp-edged, dressed in a reddened sheath dress that screamed for attention. Julian greeted her with a kiss that was anything but discreet, his hand sliding down to squeeze her backside. The camera whirred, capturing every damning moment. I followed at a distance. As they walked, intertwined, to a boutique hotel a few blocks away. More pictures. Them entering, the license plate of his car parked illegally in a loading zone, the hotel's discreet sign. Each click of the shutter was a nail in his coffin. I drove home, uploaded the photos to the Operation Phoenix folder, and called David. I have him. Public adultery, crystal clear. Excellent. Don't do anything else. He's dangerous, Maria. As if on cue, my new burner phone rang. It was Lena, calling from Mrs. Gable's landline, her voice pitched high in panic. Mom, he called Chloe asking where I was. When she said she didn't know, he threatened her. He's gonna find me. He won't, baby. I promise. I hung up and immediately called my trusted superior, Captain Robert Vance. I briefed him with everything, sending him the infidelity photos to establish a pattern of behavior. Maria, Jesus, he sighed. I'll have a patrol car do regular drive-bys on Mrs. Gable Street, but be careful. Men like him don't go down without a fight. I didn't sleep. I spent the night building the case file, organizing the evidence into a devastating timeline of abuse, betrayal, and manipulation. The next morning, I took Lena to see Dr. Alistair Finch, the psychologist David recommended. Watching my brave, broken girl walk into that office alone was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The guilt was a physical weight. I, a protector by nature and profession, had failed to protect my own. While I sat in the waiting room, my phone buzzed. It was an old contact, Benjamin Croft, the head clerk at the county records office. Sergeant Flores, this is Ben Croft. Listen, this is highly irregular, but I saw a filing this morning that made my spidey sense tingle. A property transfer. The old Flores family land on Cedar Creek. It was signed over to Sasha Volkov. The air left my lungs. The Cedar Creek property, my grandfather's land. Our family's legacy. That's impossible, Ben. I never signed anything. The signatures are here, Maria. Yours and Lena's. It was filed by a Julian Mendez, stating he had power of attorney due to family hardship. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking criminality of it. I rushed to his office. The forged signatures were crude, shaky imitations. Who filed this, Ben? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. The deputy clerk said it was your son-in-law. Said you were too busy with work. He leaned in. Someone on the inside fast-tracked it. A notary stamp was rubber-stamped. Be careful, Maria. This is big. I got a copy, my hands trembling not with fear, but with incandescent rage. This was the final piece. This proved it was all a calculated plan. Isolate Lena, devalue her, steal her inheritance, and move his mistress into her life. I picked up Lena from therapy. She was drained, but clearer-eyed. In David's office, we showed him the document. His eyes lit with a predatory glee. This is it. This is fraud, forgery, grand theft. This is a decade impression. He's finished. Lena stared at the forged signature. Her own name twisted into a lie. He was planning this all along, she whispered, a horrifying realization dawning. The hitting was to make me leave, to make me so broken I wouldn't fight him for anything. The battle lines were drawn. I gave a copy of the forgery to Captain Vance. The system was now officially in motion. On Saturday, I left Lena safely with Mrs. Gable. I dressed in civilian clothes again, but today I wasn't hiding. I was hunting. I drove to Mendez Pawn and Gold, the business I'd helped him secure a loan for. The place reeked of desperation and cheap cigars. 2 large, meaty employees, his personal muscle, leered at me from behind a glass counter full of overpriced watches. Well, well, look what the cat dragged in, the mother-in-law cop. I ignored them and walked straight back to Julian's office. He was counting a stack of cash, a gold ring flashing on his finger. "Sergeant Flores," he said, not looking up, "to what do I owe the pleasure? Come to arrest me for loving another woman?" I dropped the file on his desk. It spilled open, the photos of Lena's battered face, the hospital report, the land transfer papers. He glanced at it, then back at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Amateur hour. My lawyer will tear this pathetic little scrapbook to shreds." "I'm not here to negotiate, Julian. We'll see each other in court." He shot to his feet, his facade cracking. "Court? You think your little badge scares me? I own this town. No one will believe a hysterical woman and her pathetic daughter." The 2 goons took a step forward. I did not flinch. I simply opened my jacket, revealing my service weapon and my badge. He screamed after me as I walked out. "You walk out that door, you're dead to me. You and that worthless daughter of yours. You'll regret this." I turned at the door. The feeling is mutual. In the car, I called David. "File it, all of it. Brace yourself, Maria, the counterattack is coming." And it did. Within days, the whispers started. In the grocery store, at the coffee shop. "She's exaggerating. She's a cop with a grudge. Probably wanted his money." Julian had hired a slick, soulless lawyer from the city, a man named Sterling Thorne, who filed a countersuit alleging defamation and abuse of police power. He was painting Lena as a manipulative liar and me as a corrupt officer weaponizing the state. The most crushing blow came when a family friend stopped me on the street. "Maria, be careful. People are saying you fabricated the whole thing to get your daughter's land back for yourself." The world I had served for 20 years was suddenly believing the monster over me. The isolation was terrifying. Then the envelope appeared under my door. No stamp, just a single typed sentence. "Back off, or you'll be burying your daughter." It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration of war. I filed it with the rest of the evidence. In a late-night strategy session, David laid it out. Public opinion is with him. We need a bombshell. We need Sasha Volkov. Finding her was the next move. I discovered her habit of drinking alone at a pricey wine bar on Tuesday nights. I found her at a corner table, already 2 glasses deep. I sat down without invitation. She looked up annoyed. Then recognition dawned, followed by fear. "I'm not here to fight," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Inside was the forged land document and a credit report I'd acquired, showing she was drowning in debt, her own condo in foreclosure. "He promised you a share of my family's land to solve your problems, didn't he?" I said, my voice low and steady. "But he used you, Sasha. That document is a felony. When this goes to trial, you'll be named as a co-conspirator. You'll go down with him." Her bravado evaporated. He said it was all legal, that his wife was unstable, that he was protecting their assets. "Look at the signatures," I pressed. "They're forgeries. Commander Vance already has a copy. You can either be the other woman who helped a monster steal from his beaten wife, or you can be the witness who was deceived and came forward to tell the truth. Your choice, but choose now." Her face crumbled. The reality of prison, of ruin, was a colder shower than any wine. Just then, Julian's 2 enforcers walked in. They saw me and started toward our table. I placed my badge on the table between us. It gleamed under the soft lights. "Your boss's protection ends right here, right now," I said to them, my voice ringing with authority. They stopped, hesitated, and retreated. Sasha looked from the badge to my face, true fear in her eyes for the first time. "He can't protect me," she whispered. "No," I said, "but I can. Testify, tell the truth, and I will ensure the DA knows you cooperated." She nodded, a single tear tracing a path through her makeup. Okay, I'll do it." I called Captain Vance immediately. "We need a safe house, now." The morning of the trial was overcast, the sky a sheet of bruised gray. I helped Lena dress in a simple, high-necked navy blue dress. I braided her hair. "Hold your head high, mija," I whispered. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." Captain Vance provided an escort to the courthouse. Julian was there, flanked by Sterling Thorne, looking arrogant and untouchable. Sasha was standing off to the side, a police detective discreetly nearby, her face pale but resolute. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with tension. The trial was a blur of procedure and pain. David methodically presented our case. The photos elicited gasps. The video from Mrs. Gable's camera with Lena's heart-wrenching sobs silenced the room. When the forged land transfer was presented, a murmur of outrage rippled through the crowd. Thorne was vicious in his cross-examination, trying to paint Lena as emotionally unstable and me as a vengeful schemer. He presented doctored messages and a narrative of a marriage broken by Lena's neglect. Then David called Sasha Volkov to the stand. Her testimony was the turning point. She detailed Julian's promises, his manipulation, his casual cruelty. She confirmed he brought her the land documents to sign, assuring her everything was handled. "He told me his wife would be no problem," she said, her voice clear despite its tremor. Julian shot to his feet, his face a mask of fury. "You lying whore! I bought you that car!" The judge slammed his gavel. "Control your client, Mr. Thorne, or I will have him removed." The final blow was the threatening note. David entered it into evidence. "This, Your Honor, is the character of the man we are dealing with. Not a wronged husband, but a criminal who will stop at nothing, including threatening the life of his own wife." When it was my turn to testify, I looked not at Julian, but at the jury. "I am a sergeant with the Portside Police Department. I have served this community for 20 years. But today, I am not here as a police officer. I am here as a mother. My duty to protect and serve does not end at my front door. I failed to protect my daughter once. I will not fail her again. The man sitting there is not a husband. He is a predator, and the law exists to protect us from predators." The jury was out for less than 4 hours. The verdict was a resounding, total victory. Guilty on all counts: a Grosvenor assault, criminal threatening, forgery, fraud, and witness intimidation. A permanent restraining order was issued. The land transfer was nullified. Julian's assets were frozen pending restitution hearings. He was remanded into custody immediately, his arrogant smirk finally wiped off his face, replaced by stunned, pale disbelief. The aftermath was a slow, painful healing. Julian was sentenced to 12 to 15 years in state prison. His business collapsed. His friends vanished. The town, once buzzing with his lies, now saw the truth. The apologies from neighbors were bittersweet. Lena moved in with me permanently. The nightmares lasted for months. Dr. Finch's office became a weekly pilgrimage. But slowly, incrementally, the light returned to her eyes. She got a job at a local art gallery, a quiet place that suited her healing spirit. One evening, about 6 months after the trial, I came home to find her in the kitchen. Music was playing softly on the radio. She was humming, stirring a pot of arroz con pollo, a recipe her grandmother had taught her. She turned and smiled at me, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. And in that moment, surrounded by the familiar, comforting smell of home, I knew we were going to be okay. The scars would remain, a permanent record of the battle we had fought, but we had fought it together. And we had won. The war was over. We had our lives back. This story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life struggles against silence and abuse. Names, characters, places, and incidents are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might just be the light that guides someone else out of the darkness. Stay strong.